Why are the Broncos one game out of first place? Well, because the Buffalo Bills 20, Kansas City Chiefs 17. Bills move to 7-6 with the rest of the teams, and the Chiefs fall to 8-5. There's a lot to discuss in this game. It was supposed to be one of the games of the year, and it was for various reasons. Buffalo was moving the ball early and often. They got up 14-0, looked great, and then Kansas City's defense cracked down. Buffalo was not getting anything going. Buffalo, again, up 17-7 into the second half. Kansas City comes back to tie it at 17. And then all the craziness.
It looked like it was going to happen again for Buffalo. This was a lot like the Bills-Eagles game, right? Where Buffalo was by far the best team, certainly early. Get out to the big lead. They get that batted pass interception off Mahomes right away. Allen,
great play, A.J. Epinesa, by the way.
Yeah, Allen was, again, had determined that he had to do it all on his own. Like the idea of any kind of protection for him in the offense gone out the window. They're just like, go make a play. They get the rolling maul touchdown where Allen runs into a mass of bodies at like the 4-yard line, then the entire offensive line just piles in behind him.
Wouldn't you run more rolling mauls with Josh Allen?
100%.
Yeah.
So everything's going well for Buffalo. He has this 4th-and-1 play, which I think was indicative of the fact that he's playing quite well and not in meltdown Josh Allen mode. It's like 4th-and-1. He bails, he rolls out to the right, and then he wanted to run and realized, wait, there's like 2 linebackers between me and I'm not going to make it. So he held himself back, and then because he was sort of paralyzed, there wasn't really a pass open either. So he kind of dithered, do I run, do I stay? And then just sort of lunks around a linebacker and gets the ball to somebody and picks up the first down. Like, okay, Allen's in the zone when that happens. Like when he does that and doesn't screw it up and do something silly, Allen's playing well. So everything was going well.
And then he screws it up and does something silly.
Yeah, and then they stop scoring as well. And you're like, they're gonna get punished again. This is gonna be another one of these games where they're really good. They look like the better team. Maybe they can beat anybody in the NFL and somehow lose again, like they did with the Eagles game.
So when it was 14-0, I remember I was going to tweet, all right, Buffalo, they're up 2 scores. The only thing right now that can get Kansas City back in would be one of those Josh Allen patented turnovers.
Yeah.
He did have a turnover-worthy play that fell incomplete, but then he throws back across his body, gets picked off, and that was what gave the Chiefs a short field, sparked their comeback, their first touchdown. But the play that you described was kind of like it's 4th down, and he's trying to buy every last split second so that he could figure out, run, pass, find a hole, have somebody break their coverage, and he makes the first down. That was a precursor to what ended up being the play of the game, and also highlights the Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes factor. Those guys are just creating football plays that never existed before. That when the play of the game before the offsides was Josh Allen rolling to the left, falling out of bounds to the point where they had to review if he had stepped out of bounds. He got so close to the sideline, they had to review if he stepped out of bounds. He did not. And throws the ball up to Latavius Murray on the scramble drill. Murray then catches it.
And the touch on that as well. Like, didn't just throw it, but like lofted it gently in the air so that a running back who's not known for his hands could like just gently,
that's what him and Mahomes have been doing, right? It's like I'm not going to like make sure I've got perfect form. I'm literally just like flipping the ball around whenever I have an opening, because I've just prolonged the play so much. So Allen did unbelievable play to do that. Murray catches it, then fumbles, then the ball ends up out of bounds. They reviewed whether or not it was Allen stepped out of bounds. They reviewed if it was a catch. They reviewed to make sure nobody recovered it in bounds, but we knew that was pretty much the case. And that ended up leading to the Bills what ended up becoming the game-winning field goal.
That was like Keystone Cop stuff, them trying to recover the ball. Like he didn't, I don't think, try to do this, but Gabe Davis, just in trying to bring the ball into his body, almost like fired it out of bounds.
And that was the biggest win for Buffalo because they had possession before, so they held on to it.
There was somebody, because remember, was it last week we praised Cordarrelle Patterson for batting the ball out of bounds rather than risk the fumble. Somebody else did that in the game this week where it was like an ill-advised desperation throw out by the quarterback to the running back who was going to get, I can't remember whether it was backwards, or they knew they were going to get buried. So instead of catch it, he just threw his hand up and punched it over his head and just helped it on its way out of bounds, rather than take the worst play, which is clever. But then this, I think, was entirely incidental. He just tried to scoop it and fired it under himself and out of bounds.
One more thing, as you mentioned, back at the beginning of the game when Buffalo was looking great, James Cook looked fantastic. They got him open on a Chiefs type play. Romo highlighted the halfback seam. James Cook wide open up the seam. He looked great running the ball. They were featuring him early before. Again, they stalled out for a while, but the end of the game, man. Let's get into it.
Well, so also, it's 17-14 late in the third quarter. The Bills forced a huge fumble when Kansas City was basically coming back. Christian Benford ripped it from Rashee Rice. Teron Johnson recovered. And this is the one flaw that Rashee Rice has had. I think he's still by far their best wide receiver, but he's had some drops and he's had some turnovers in terms like that. If they could just avoid those plays, he might be the answer to everything they're dealing with. But there's just enough of those to either make them tap the brakes on, giving him a monster workload, or simply enough to undo some of the good work that he does.
But they did a good job. I think Andy Reid does this far more than other coaches. After the fumble, they came back the very next drive, threw a screen to him on the first play for 15 yards.
Sure.
I can't believe how good Rashee Rice has become after the catch. He also had the one touchdown back at the end zone as well in this game, and caught a key back shoulder on that comeback attempt before the madness.
Yeah, I mean, he's 7 catches for 70 yards, a touchdown, but that turnover, I haven't checked in terms of EPA, but that might undo all of that in one play.
Yeah, it was a bad fumble. So then a couple other things here. Buffalo it's tied 17-17, and Buffalo's driving with 5 or 6 minutes left. So if you're Buffalo, there's this best case scenario where you could somehow chew up all 6-7 minutes of the clock.
Right.
And kick the field goal to end the game. That's unlikely. But they get down to close to 2 minutes left, just outside the 2-minute warning. And they get the dreaded, depending on which team you're watching here, the dreaded illegal contact, automatic first down. It was 3rd and long. Chiefs get called for illegal contact. The Bills get gifted a first down, negates a sack of Josh Allen. So now they get first down just outside the 2-minute warning. So there is this play, in Cincinnati did this against Kansas City a couple of years ago, where they ran out the entire last 2 minutes, including the Chiefs' timeouts, to just make sure that they kicked a last-second field goal. And you never give Mahomes a chance.
Right.
And if there's any team that doesn't want to give Mahomes a chance, it's the Bills, because they gave him 13 seconds once. Right?
Yeah.
And
Instead,
so
they kept passing before the 2-minute warning.
And they go with the little bubble screen. I don't know if it was a read, but they go bubble screen, drop, stop the clock. They end up taking seconds off the clock. And it's 3rd and long, and instead of there was a world where they left the Chiefs either 0 time or under a minute.
Well, they ran 3 plays before the 2-minute warning, having been set up with 1st and 10 with 12 seconds before the 2-minute warning. So in 12 seconds, they ran 3 plays.
So they end up giving the Chiefs $150 or whatever it was, and down 3, and it's a different Chiefs team this year, but in the past, that's where Mahomes and the Chiefs usually lead the comeback. And we thought they did. Mahomes hits Travis Kelce on a long pass. Travis Kelce, who has made it a point that it doesn't matter where I am on the football field or who's near me, I'm just going to fire passes. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to start chucking passes.
God, I love
on top of that, all right, underrated in this whole thing, he threw it to Kadarius Toney.
Yeah.
He was like, sure, I trust you. Maybe that's what's missing here. Maybe Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the same level of confidence that Travis Kelce has in Kadarius Toney. Because with the game on the line, Travis Kelce, who's getting into field goal range, is like, let me just lateral this thing.
Just a little faith in your playmakers.
Have a little faith in Kadarius Toney. Now, Toney, granted, had a little head start getting down the field on this particular play. Had a little head start getting down the field, and that's why he was there for the lateral. So Travis Kelce hits Kadarius Toney with a throwback lateral that would have been the go-ahead touchdown in one of the most ridiculous great plays in NFL history.
It was insane.
However, and then when the refs say offsides, you're like, oh, of course that's on the defense. Offsides, offense. It was on Kadarius Toney.
This
thoughts?
play was insane. Like, I've been talking about this for a long time. The concept that adding laterals after the catch, adding in actual elements of rugby to football is, I honestly believe it's like the next phase of potential cheat code offense, right? There's a world that can open up if you simply trust players to execute a fairly basic skill that can propel an offense in a completely different dimension, right? It's the reason they don't do it is the concern of a fumble, right? If you screw it up, it's a turnover, and that's a really bad play. Much more dangerous than it is in rugby. But sure, the reason that's so dangerous is because you don't practice it. It's not a thing you do, and it's sort of, the argument sounds a lot like the argument against the forward pass, right? Remember when people were like, well, if you throw the ball, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad. Well, we've gone from that to now every team in the NFL passes the ball more than they run it because it's more efficient, it's more dangerous, and it's more effective. This was a play where it's not even designed. Like, Kelsey catches this ball in the middle of the field and then, like, runs in a circle trying to find an open guy for no good reason and just spots Toney wide open on the left because everybody, like 3 different guys, are now converging on Kelsey to bring him down. And he's like, oh, that means nobody's covering this guy now. I'm just going to pitch in the ball. Fires it to Toney, who now has a walk-in 20-yard run for a touchdown.
A couple thoughts here. And my question to you, Travis Kelce is one of the best natural playmakers in NFL history. Mm-hmm. And he happens to be paired up with one of the best natural quarterbacks as far as playmaking goes in NFL history.
Yes.
Right? So Travis Kelce, they talk about he doesn't even run routes. He just kind of like slaloms through the defense and just knows where to go. He's got instincts and feel. And he's a former quarterback. I don't know if you're suggesting, Devontae Adams to do this or what, because we've also seen what happens when you tell, hey, Jacoby Myers starts to play instinctually.
Yeah.
Or
no. So
whatever it might be.
What I'm suggesting is not this. This is the thing. What makes this so amazing is it was not designed, it was instinctive, it was ad-libbed, and it was crazy, right? But it worked, except for the penalty, which we'll get to. And as you said, like, even his route running in this play, like he essentially, he gets himself open by pushing his route deeper into this like exchange, and the 2 Bills defenders end up taking themselves out with the guy trying to run vertical. Kelce just slips underneath it. He's wide open in the middle. First down. Like, that alone is an amazing play by Kelce. And then you get this bit where after the catch, he just runs in this little circle to nowhere, and just it must just occur to him that if these 3 guys are on me, nobody's over there on this dude who ran a route and is now wide open. So, but what I am suggesting is, instead of relying on a playmaker, in this case Travis Kelce, divining all of this information live as it happens and then realizing what that means.
Set it up.
Yes, draw it up as part of the play. Design it so that you have a trail runner coming in behind a guy who's caught the ball who the defense is no longer focusing on, because the guy's caught the ball, right? You can actually create this dynamic with the play design and draw it up so that instead of saying, hey, find this, make it happen, right? Because that's where you get the Jacoby Myers thing, where for some reason it's in his mind that I need to find some crazy lateral on this play and I'm going to put the ball in harm's way. Instead, you draw it up so that the ball carrier, the receiver, has a very simple yes or no. It's an either or option, right? You catch the ball, you look at this guy. If the circumstance is such that everybody has abandoned him and he's wide open, pitch him the ball. If it isn't, get tackled as you would normally do. That's the next frontier.
You're putting a lot of pressure on players who aren't used to making those types of decisions. I don't hate it, though.
How is that any different, though, from if you trust a receiver to run an option route in a game? Run the play. If safety is there, run this route. If safety isn't there, run this other route. It's the same concept. You're just asking him to make a very simple either-or read.
I would liken it, though, to the risk factor in, say, 4th downs, where the payoff is great.
Yes.
And the risk is great. Obviously, you lose the ball. Much like on a failed 4th down, you lose the ball, you lose a lot of field position or points, potentially. But the payoff is great if it works. But it was I mean, this is just Travis Kelce, freestyling out there, which is
crazy.
Part of his greatness in the ability to do that. So this play gets negated because Kadarius Toney lined up offsides. They called it offensive offsides.
Yeah.
But controversy coming out of this game was the Chiefs were unhappy. They didn't like this being called because this didn't end the game, by the way. They still had – it became 1st and 15 after this play, I believe, or 2nd and 15.
2nd and 15.
Yeah, so 2nd and 15. They had three incompletions followed this play for the Bills to seal the deal here. But Mahomes was livid after the game. He has been – we're a week removed from 4 bad calls in the last minute of the Packers-Chiefs Sunday night football game that went 2-2. They went both ways on Sunday night. But this particular play was the right call. I mean, he was offsides. The question and the controversy here is, head linesmen, do they have, did they make sure? Did they check? Did they, a lot of times the receiver's going to check, hey, am I good? No, you're not good. Back up. We had the same debate a couple years ago. Terry McLaurin lined up. He was off on the line when he wasn't supposed to be or whatever it was, and it negated a touchdown for Washington. But Mahomes and the Chiefs were livid, and it was the right call, but they were more upset that either there was no warning given or not the time to make that call. But as 5.4 million people somehow have seen, I just tweeted a picture with Romo circling it. Everybody thought I circled it, but it was from the broadcast. And it's pretty egregious offside by Kadarius Toney here.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack. The first part is you can't argue the call. The call itself. You can't look at it and argue, nah, he's onside, it's cool. Like, it's definitely, clearly, inarguably, he is offside, right? So that part, and even the Chiefs are not arguing that. Like, you listen, and they've made some crappy arguments about this, and they keep arguing it. Like, Andy Reid has whinged about it, Mahomes has whinged about it. None of them are saying he's not offside. They're all just like, anyway. So that part is true. It is, he is offside. Now, a bunch of people are like, oh, how could you possibly line up there? Tony's an idiot. This is ridiculous. Look, it's not as easy as you think it would be to simply be on the line, because the line isn't the line, right? If you look where, is it Rashee Rice on the other side, like where he's lined up? He's not on the line, so to speak. He's just on the line as we understand it from a football convention, which is in a slightly different point. And when you're looking down the line as a receiver, it's not as easy as you would think it is, right? Which is why you will see almost all the time a receiver line up, look to the sideline, and like point either I'm on or off to the side judge, right? Who will, generally speaking, give him an indication back, yes, you're in the right place, or no, move up or down, right? This happens all the time. The problem is, it's kind of like an uncodified convention that doesn't exist in the rule book anywhere. So you get plays like that Terry McLaurin thing, where McLaurin says, I asked, was I on the line? He said yes, and then threw a flag. That's a problem. So what we don't know here is, did that happen? Did Toney ask, was he on the line or not, and was he signaled? Somebody tweeted that he definitely did, but that tweet got deleted, so I don't know if that's true or not. If he didn't ask, that's his biggest flaw, right? Not that he lined up offside, because that can happen. It's that he didn't check. What Andy Reid is saying, I think, though it's unclear from his words, Andy Reid, Ari Meroff has a tweet that Andy Reid on the Kadarius Toney offsides. Usually I get a warning before something like that happens. And then he says, it's a bit embarrassing in the National Football League for that to take place. I've been in the league for a long time, haven't had one like that. I interpret that to mean generally when officials are going to call a guy offsides, they will give the coach a heads up that he is lining up offsides and like, hey, get him in line because the next time I'm going to call it, right? They'll give you a freebie.
Yeah.
They'll be like, hey, 19's lining up offside, get him in line or I'm going to start flagging it. Now, it could technically mean that he could be talking about within the play. The official will give me a heads up, hey, he's offside, so I can get him onside before he calls a flag. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying that usually they'll like give them a free one. And then Mahomes is just like he's just upset. Like Mahomes is issuing very petulant, whingy answers that I think are simply the product of immense frustration of a season in an offense that is not firing and is not his fault, right? So he's saying stuff like, basically, his argument effectively is it was an inconsequential penalty that didn't affect anything, so they should have just let it slide, you know?
His argument's not great.
No, it's a bad argument.
Mahomes has been.
And I think on reflection down the line, Mahomes will probably regret some of the things he said about this.
Yeah.
But at the moment, the man is deeply frustrated, and you can understand it.
He also complained. It's kind of funny. He complained about it to Josh Allen in their post-game handshake.
Right.
And Allen's like, "All right, man. Like, okay, we needed this win. Don't care."
Yeah, he goes right out there to the handshake, and it's like, can't believe that. Worst call I've ever seen. Offensive offside. It's crazy. Like, just bitching about it immediately. Having already, like, screamed at the officials and had to have been held back on the sideline, the dude just lost his mind. And I get it. I mean, it is a really unfortunate and annoying way for a game like that to end, and for it to, like, remove one of the greatest plays in NFL history from that play didn't happen anymore, right? All this, it's the new frontier. Rugby's the way. I have a YouTube video on how rugby could unlock it all.
This was your big moment.
It was I'm the real loser here. That's the important thing.
Your whole brand was going to take off.
All gone now. By the way, right, I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed every time the rugby thing happens. I get a bunch of people tagging me, or I tweet about it, and then a bunch of people tag PFT commenter. I'm sure I was at that thing first. I'm older than he is, probably. Right? I'm older than him.
It's probably close.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It's close.
Anyway, there's no way that he was on the rugby bandwagon before I was. No way. Ain't no way.
He's way more famous, though.
Hashtag Stephen A. I was there first. Have to have been. Now, he's
way more famous.
He's more famous, and he's got a bigger platform, and he may have said it to more people, but I was there first.
Well, let's get PFT back on the podcast. Friend of the show. We'll get him back on the podcast to break it down and get to the bottom of that.
I am older than him. Therefore, I was there first.
Good for you. Good for you, man. Yeah, I mean, I think it was – Mahomes has been great. I mean, last week, Marcos Valdes-Scantling got a piggyback ride to the catch point, and they didn't call it a defensive pass interference, and Mahomes kept back, comes back and say, no, let's win it on the field. He didn't complain. He's been great from a PR perspective.
And to his credit, last week and this week is consistent in his argument. Like he is basically like, just let him play.
Yeah.
Just let him play. That's his point, is don't decide it with the flag. Let him play, and if it goes against us letting him play, cool, but let him play. Like that, week to week, that is consistent. Now, I don't remember him being particularly vociferous at the end of the AFC title game last year of like, hey, don't throw the flag on me getting hit out of bounds. Let him play.
His game-winning drive in the AFC Championship, they were stopped on third down, and then a late hit put them in position for the game-winning field goal, and then a 3rd and 4 holding was the reason why we didn't get to see Jalen Hurts try a game-winning drive.
So multiple, both the last two games, I don't remember him coming out and saying that shouldn't have been a flag, they should have let it go, right? So
he did not.
There is a degree of, inconsistency there. But at least in the last 2 weeks, his point has been, don't throw the flag, let him decide it on the field. And that's a reasonable point. This is the thing about this penalty call, right? It's correct. It's technical. And the technicality of the penalty just feels crappy, right? It's like, this is the greatest play, one of the greatest plays ever, and you've taken it off the field for what is an entirely correct call, but not one that anybody wants to see defining a game. That's what annoys people. And there's various ways of reacting to that. Mahomes is a sort of toddler-like petulance and just whinging about it. Andy Reid is to say, it feels like he could have resolved this in an unwritten rule type of way and just, gotten away with it. I don't know. That whole area is kind of messy, and I kind of feel like something like this has been coming for a long time, and the NFL should probably clean it up.
So a couple things coming out of this. It was definitely multiple weeks of frustration, I think, building up. The Chiefs have lost 3 out of their last 4 out of their last 6. They're 1-3 since their bye. I was trying to hint at this coming out in the preview show. They played the Packers, who were coming off a bye. They played the Bills, who were coming off a bye. They're now going to play the Patriots coming off of a Thursday night game, so the Patriots have the couple extra days of rest. So, again, the Chiefs are now 8-5. They haven't been in this position in multiple years. Far, far away from the number 1 seed now because of 2 games behind the Ravens. However, the last 4 games for Kansas City, at New England and Bailey Zappi, against the Raiders and Aiden O'Connell, against the Cincinnati Bengals and the great Jake Browning, and then against the Chargers and likely hockey equipment Easton Stick. So there's also a path for them to easily get back to 12-5 and be in the mix here, but clearly the Chiefs are frustrated in one of the biggest games of the year. And for Buffalo, they moved to 7-6 with the rest of the pack. Their schedule is kind of the opposite because they still have
huge win for Buffalo.
Yeah, they have, and it's not the opposite, but they still have Dallas next week, right? So the Bills are in the middle of this run facing the Eagles, the Chiefs, now the Cowboys next week, and then they still have Miami Miami to finish the season. But Buffalo, I don't know that they have to win out necessarily, but of course with everybody 7-6 like Buffalo, every game matters here.
It undoes the damage from that Philadelphia loss where they should have won that game. They didn't win the game.
And it's more important because it's a conference.
That's the thing. You made that point at the time. Like, look, they still have a way. Like, they could get it back with Kansas City. This is a more important win if they get it. And they do. They end up splitting those two games and go 500. I guess that's probably about as good as you could have expected from those two games. And they got the more important win in terms of AFC versus NFC. So it does completely undo the damage. But that's not to say it rescues the season, because next you do have Dallas and then Chargers, Patriots, and Dolphins away to end the season. So they've kept themselves alive, but they're still very much in trouble.